Did you know that according to law, food manufacturers are not required to have any language on the packaging that tells you that the product is GMO or bioengineered? Crazy, huh? Also, have you ever wondered exactly what genetically modified foods are and where they originated? If you want to know more, this video will explain everything you need to know about GMO foods. Genetic modification began back in the 1970s, a time of experimentation and discovery in the world of science. This was the era when scientists first started toying with the concept of manipulating genes, marking the inception of genetically modified organisms, or GMOs as we commonly know them. In their pursuit of knowledge, scientists sought to enhance the properties of living organisms. I don't know about you, but the thought of altering the creator's design scares the heck out of me. Just like you and I, plants have DNA, so anything that we can do to a plant could be done to a human. These scientists were intrigued by the idea of introducing new traits into plants, traits that could make them more resistant to diseases, increase their yield, or even make them taste better. This led to the development of revolutionary techniques like gene splicing and DNA manipulation. Just imagine, scientists were able to cut and paste genes, much like how we do with text on a computer. With these techniques, they could take a desirable trait from one organism and insert it into another, effectively creating a new mutant organism with altered characteristics. This groundbreaking work culminated in the creation of the first genetically modified plant in the early 1980s. The plant was a humble tobacco plant, but it was a significant milestone in the history of genetic engineering, paving the way for the development of all of the other genetically modified crops we see today. Yet, as with any scientific advancement, the path was not always smooth. The journey was filled with trials and errors, successes and failures, and a whole lot of perseverance. And even though the world of genetics was evolving at a rapid pace, they had to keep exploring mutations in our food supply. The tools and techniques during this period served as the foundation for the field of genetic engineering as we know it today. With these techniques, scientists unlocked a new world of possibilities, leading to the birth of GMOs. And as we'll see in the next scenes, this was just the beginning of a journey that would forever change our understanding of food and agriculture. Before we go on, please like and share my videos if you like them. Or you can now visit the link in the description of this video to the PHARMACIST store and check out a few designs that I've created. If you enjoy this video and want to support the channel, consider leaving a super thanks. Your contribution helps me create more great content for you. Thank you. Okay, let's see what they are poisoning us with now and how they conceal it. So, what types of genetic modifications do scientists perform and why? Well, let's dive right into it. Genetic modification is a broad term that encompasses a variety of techniques. One significant type is the addition of genes, where scientists insert genes from one organism into another. This is usually done to make crops resistant to pests or diseases. For instance, Bt plants are a type of genetically modified crops that have been engineered to produce a toxin that is lethal to certain pests, reducing the need for chemical pesticides. So the question we must ask is, can these toxins be harmful to humans? Of course, the official answer is that they are generally safe for consumption. So let's just clarify, these Bt genetic modifications do not involve adding pesticides directly into the plant's DNA. Rather, they enable the plant to produce substances that are toxic or unappealing to pests. So basically, now our foods are manufacturing toxins. You might remember from my COVID vaccine video that mRNA COVID vaccines use exactly this same technique. They inject a piece of the virus into you, and your own body manufactures toxins against the virus, which is inducing autoimmune situation. This BET technology is exactly the same. It causes the plant to create an autoimmune situation, where it produces toxins to kill the bugs. Here's how it works. One of the most common methods used to create pest-resistant GMO crops involves the insertion of a gene from the bacterium Bacillus thuringiensis, Bt. This bacterium naturally produces a protein, Bt toxin, that is toxic to specific insects, particularly caterpillars, larvae, and some beetles. When pests feed on Bt crops, the Bt toxin binds to receptors in the gut of the insect, causing the gut cells to rupture. This leads to the insect's death, effectively protecting the plant from damage. So are these toxins in mass quantities destroying our guts? An estimated 60 to 70 million people in the United States, including both adults and children, are affected by some form of gastrointestinal GI disorder. That's about 20% of the country. This includes conditions like irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD, Crohn's disease, and others. Why should children have such disorders, and are drugs the only way to treat them? What are your thoughts? Is our food supply making us sick? Another type of genetic modification is altering existing genes in an organism to enhance or suppress their function. This can be done to increase the nutritional value of a crop, such as golden rice, which has been modified to produce vitamin A. This modification aims to combat vitamin A deficiency in regions where rice is a staple food. Now that we know what they are, let's look at why these types of modifications are made. The reasons are manifold. One of the key motivations is to increase crop yield. By making plants resistant to pests or diseases, or more tolerant to harsh environmental conditions, we can grow more food on the same amount of land. So the primary reason that they are created is to increase profit, larger crops, and longer shelf lives of food. Another primary reason is to reduce reliance on pesticides as described above, which could lessen the amount of chemicals sprayed on our fields, which has numerous environmental and health benefits. This sounds good in theory until you examine how the food is made more resistant to insects. Do we want to be eating foods that have manufactured toxins? While all of the three-letter agencies tell us that Bacillus thuringiensis toxin is safe, allergies to the toxin have occurred. Some GMOs are engineered to produce chemicals that deter pests from feeding on them. These could be naturally occurring compounds found in other plants that pests avoid, or they could be synthetic. By incorporating the genes responsible for producing these chemicals into a crop's DNA, the plants can naturally repel pests. Again, the obvious reaction is allergy. Lastly, genetic modifications are seen as a way to combat global hunger. By enhancing the nutritional content of staple crops, GMOs are being sold as a way to stop global hunger. Of course, lowering the price of food is another way to go if a big corporation wants to stop global hunger. An influential figure in the GMO debate is none other than tech billionaire Bill Gates. He is portrayed as a philanthropist by the elite due to his alleged efforts in global health and development. Gates pushes the world hunger narrative to make himself appear as a true humanitarian. In fact, Gates has put his money where his mouth is. His foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, has invested millions of dollars into GMO research, particularly on crops like corn and rice. But let's take a look at a few more concepts that Gates has put his money or support behind. Bill Gates, through his Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, his investment firm Breakthrough Energy, and other personal ventures, has supported a wide range of technologies. The Gates Foundation has heavily invested in vaccine development and distribution, especially for diseases like polio, malaria, and COVID-19. The foundation played a significant role in the development and global distribution of vaccines during the COVID-19 pandemic. He has also invested in diagnostic tools and technologies, including rapid diagnostic tests for diseases like tuberculosis and COVID-19. Gates committed at least $1.75 billion to fight COVID-19, including vaccine development, diagnostics, and treatments. What are your thoughts on Gates' money funding COVID vaccines and the COVID tests? Next, Gates has funded research for malaria and HIV treatments, including the development of new drugs, diagnostics, and vector control methods like genetically modified mosquitoes. How's that sound? Gates founded Breakthrough Energy Ventures, BEV, a $1 billion fund focused on investing in cutting-edge energy technologies that can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Then, Gates is a proponent of advanced nuclear energy and has invested in TerraPower, a company developing next-generation nuclear reactors that are safer and more efficient than traditional reactors. Getting worried yet? Gates has supported research into carbon capture and storage, CCS technologies that aim to capture CO2 emissions from industrial processes and power plants and store them underground. Storing CO2 emissions underground? I don't know. If CO2 is stored in a pressurized container, like a fire extinguisher or a CO2 tank used in carbonated beverages, and the container is damaged or exposed to extreme heat, it could rupture or explode due to the high internal pressure. What if Gates' storage containers ruptured? How would an explosion of CO2 affect human, animal, and plant life? Gates has supported research in gene editing technologies like CRISPR, which have the potential to cure genetic diseases, improve crop resilience, and combat pests. That tells me what I need to know about CRISPR. He has also invested in AI technologies that may be used in diagnosing diseases and developing new drugs. But that's not all he had to do with COVID or preparation for future pandemics. Gates is heavily invested in companies whose aim is to prepare for pandemics and establish recommendations for how to deal with them. Kind of like forcing masks and vaccines and locking people down so children can't go to school and people can't hug their dying parent. Then there is the food supply. His foundation has invested billions in agricultural research and development, particularly in Africa. This includes funding for genetically modified crops, sustainable farming practices, and food security initiatives. Poetic, isn't it? Of course, no maniacal billionaire would not be heavily invested in banking. Gates has invested in mobile banking platforms like M-Pesa and other financial technologies which are similar to PayPal. Sounds innocent enough, right? Well, M-Pesa specifically seeks to control the money of people primarily in Africa with limited access to the central banks. You're gonna love this. Gates also funds digital identity initiatives enabling access to services like banking, healthcare, and education, so he has your fingerprints and probably your DNA. And lastly, he's not happy helping adults. The Gates Foundation has spent over $10 billion on education since 2000. I would love to see the books and curriculums that he funds. I can't share what caused his abrupt divorce from his ex-wife Melinda. I will have to leave that up to others. But I will tell you that Bill Gates has attended multiple Bilderberg conferences. I can also tell you that looking at all of Bill Gates' investments is like the Cliff Note version of studying technologies for me. If he's invested in it, I want nothing to do with these intrusive and dangerous technologies. I can tell you that Bill Gates is a registered Democrat and has publicly supported various Democratic candidates including Al Gore, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris. But we are told that he is bipartisan. So if Bill Gates is dumping support into the Democratic Party, he is getting support for his demented technologies from them. That's how it works. Look for the patterns, guys. Look for associations. They can be quite indicative of a person's allegiance. That's how the puzzle gets put together. You may have heard about the law passed to disclose genetically modified foods. I absolutely couldn't believe this. As of January 1st, 2022, the U.S. requires labeling genetically modified foods as bioengineered under a new federal standard, replacing state-level regulations. This standard includes the genetically modified foods created using cutting-edge bioengineering techniques like CRISPR and gene splicing. The labeling options include text, a USDA-approved logo, or again a QR code. Did you get that last one? A QR code. You know that black and white image with some numbers under it? The one that you can't see, let alone understand unless you have a cell phone that has an app with you. Now they are forcing us to use a QR code, just like they did during the pandemic when you had to have a cell phone to see the menu. I would just leave and take my money to someone who at least had a printed menu. We just have to resist if we don't agree. What are they doing with the QR codes? They are clearly discriminating against elderly or handicapped people who may not be able to use QR codes. What are your thoughts? Are you okay with removing the written language and requiring internet access for all transactions? It's not just me. Critics argue that the rules may confuse consumers, exclude many highly refined foods, and disadvantage those without digital access. The Center for Food Safety has sued the USDA, claiming the standard obscures GMO content, while some industry groups support the move for promoting transparency. Isn't that a shock? So, GMOs have not been without controversy. Despite Gates' support, many critics argue that the potential risks of GMOs outweigh the benefits. Point to concerns about environmental impacts, potential health risks, and the ethical implications of tampering with nature's design. And these concerns extend to the modern techniques used to create GMOs. Methods like CRISPR and gene splicing, though they hold the promise of significant scientific advancements, are still relatively new and their long-term effects are not fully known. As the debate continues, it's clear that the conversation about GMOs and the techniques used to create them is far from over. What are the concerns surrounding GMOs? This is a question that echoes around the world, with an increasing number of people becoming wary of genetically modified and the bioengineering techniques used to create them. The controversy over GMOs is far from settled, and it revolves around a number of potential risks, both to human health and the environment. These concerns have led to a growing public outcry for more transparency, research, and regulation of GMOs, including the bioengineering techniques in their creation. Critics argue that we should apply the precautionary principle, erring on the side of caution, until we know more about the potential risks. As we navigate this complex and controversial landscape, one thing is clear: the debate over GMOs is far from over. These concerns have led to calls for more research and regulation of GMOs. What does long-term testing reveal about the impact of GMOs on human health? Well, the answer isn't as clear-cut as we'd like. While genetically modified foods have been a part of our diet for several decades, comprehensive long-term studies on their effects on human health are surprisingly few and far between. One systematic review does stand out, however. This review evaluated the effects of genetically modified food consumption through an extensive analysis of animal studies and one notable human trial. The findings were, to put it mildly, concerning. The review included over 200 animal studies, and these showed several adverse events. These range from severe outcomes such as mortality and cancer to fertility issues and abnormalities in organ function. Even more alarming is the fact that these adverse effects were not limited to a specific type of genetically modified food or to a particular species of test animals. This suggests that the risks may be inherent to the process of genetic modification itself, rather than being linked to specific modified genes or organisms. Turning our attention to the human trial, it's worth noting that this was the only one of its kind included in the review. It's a stark reminder of just how little we know about the long-term effects of GMOs on our own species. The results of this trial mirrored those of the animal studies, with participants showing similar adverse effects. But with just one trial, we must be cautious about drawing definitive conclusions. This lack of data underscores the need for further research. There is a pressing need for more human trials and long-term studies to fully understand the potential health risks associated with GMO consumption. In the meantime, the review stresses the importance of labeling genetically modified foods. This would allow consumers to make informed choices about what they're putting into their bodies, and perhaps even encourage further research by highlighting public concern. While GMOs hold promise, the potential health risks cannot be ignored. So where does this leave us in the GMO debate? How do we protect our families from the potential risks of genetically modified frankenfoods that have virtually no long-term safety studies? The top 10 genetically modified GM food crops are 1. Corn, widely modified for pest resistance and herbicide tolerance. 2. Soybeans, commonly engineered for herbicide tolerance. 3. Cotton, modified for insect resistance and herbicide tolerance. 4. Canola, altered for herbicide resistance and improved oil profile. We never eat anything that contains canola oil. 5. Sugar beets, engineered for herbicide tolerance. 6. Alfalfa, modified for herbicide resistance for you horse owners. 7. Papaya, modified to resist the ring spot virus. 8. Squash, altered to resist specific viruses. 9. Potatoes, engineered to reduce bruising and resistance to pests. And 10. Apples, modified to resist browning. Remember how an apple a day used to keep the doctor away? Well, maybe not so much anymore. To sum it up, genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, are being sold to us as a scientific marvel, designed with the intention of improving crop yields and enhancing farmer safety. This technology has been championed by influential figures like Bill Gates, who sees it as a solution to global food security issues. However, there are valid concerns about their potential impact on our health and the environment. Some studies suggest serious adverse effects, including mortality, cancer, fertility issues, and organ abnormalities. To complicate things, the existence of genetically modified ingredients can be totally hidden by a loophole in the law requiring QR code access by the consumer. There's also a pressing need for more comprehensive research, including long-term studies and clinical trials, to fully understand the implications of genetically modifying our food. Importantly, as we navigate this complex issue, consumer choice remains paramount. Transparency in labeling and providing accurate information about GMO products is essential. It empowers us, the consumers, to make decisions that align with our health priorities and personal values. The debate over GMOs is far from over. As consumers, it's crucial for us to stay informed and make choices that reflect our values and health priorities. Remember, in our pursuit of progress, we must tread carefully, as altering nature can carry profound consequences that may not be fully understood until it's too late.